May's here. It's time for May Deer Chores. And I also talk about May Deer fails and what you shouldn't do, but these are some things that you should be doing, and these are the things that a lot of these that are a good idea to do right now, but also what I'm doing on the farm here. So there's a little bit of mix of both, and there's some that are more hunting related versus habitat, some that you can take to the public land woods too. So pay attention to the end when we talk about some public land scouting when it comes to what you should be doing in May. But there's first one here is testing broadheads. This is important because if you've noticed the last few years, and I'm sure you have, when you get in towards hunting season, August, September, there's been a lot of broadhead and arrow shortages. And so if you're going to make some changes, the time to do it is now, not September. What I like to do especially, it's one thing to sight in your bow and say, okay, my bow is good out to 50 yards, 60 yards, 40 yards, 30, whatever your distance is you like to shoot. For one thing, you should always shoot about twice as far as you would for hunting season during practice. And that's something I've been teaching for a decade or more. You can look up an old article that I have. It's called Stretch Your Limits for Archery Practice, written a long time ago, maybe 2009, somewhere out there, 2008. Well, bottom line is it's very important to take the time to look at your equipment and say, what do I need to change? And start doing that now slowly so you can really get used to it. I don't want to really get built up to archery shape. Then I want to group test these broadheads at 80 yards and 90 yards, somewhere around there. So for me, I want to group test these broadheads and make they fly well. I want to make sure that they make sense on paper. I'm not a big fan of huge cutting diameters. It can be hung up on heavy meat or bone. I'm not a fan of the big cut and impact broadheads that have to be driven by a 600 grain arrow or a 500 grain arrow. I want more balance in my approach. I'm not a fan of ultralight arrows that require a small cut and impact head. I really like a blend. You know, I teach balance all the time, whether it's deer herd management, does, bucks, archery equipment. I don't want to have to pull 70, 75 pounds. I want to be able to pull back easily and shoot it. You know, my bow at 62 pounds, I've shot 62 pounds for probably 15 years. And that bow is more capable than my old PSE Fireflight from 1988, 89 at 74, which is what I used to shoot that one. Let alone I've shot it as high as 90 pounds. Some of those bows are crazy how far you could crank them up back in the day. But same arrow, way different speed, stored energy, so much different. And so I want to get my archery gear in line. And when it comes to broadheads, I want something that offers balance. I want a decent cutting diameter, but I don't want to totally rely on a mechanical portion of the broadhead. I love the hybrids. I've used the Muzzy Trocar HB for a long time. Slick Trick is a quality head that I've looked at for a long time, but they didn't offer the hybrid. Now they do. They have an assailant, and so I got some of these to test out. I like the way they look. Dylan will zoom in on these later, but they have a long, narrow head that'll penetrate well and not glance off. They have the two fixed position bleeder blades like my Muzzies did, and so they're real similar design to the Muzzies. Just I like it. So this one's a little bit more slender, a little bit longer, and it's also got about a 1 7/8 I think it was 1 7/8 cutting diameter, 1 3/4 inch cutting diameter on those big mechanical portions. So I like that balance. I still have those stronger fixed position blades that offer a minimal cut, and then I have the wider blades for producing a great wound channel. So I'm going to try those out. I want to see how they fly because that accuracy is so critical to me. And the Muzzies are pretty decent. I'd like them to be a little bit more accurate, and so that's why I want to try these Slick Tricks that have always had a great reputation. The bottom line is I'm doing that now in May and not waiting until September, until August. And I'm getting a hold of these when I can so that if I want to switch to these, I can and use them, and I have a supply going into the season that I'm well supplied. No cutting. When it comes into May, when leaves are starting to come out is when I stop cutting in the woods. And so you still have some big buds. All that energy is being transferred to the tips of the tree. That's when I don't want to cut. I want to cut more, let's skip ahead till August. That gets me out of the oak wilt time too. So I don't want to cause oak wilt on the property. If you're cutting and damaging those oaks during oak wilt time, which would be when oaks leaf out for about 2 months after, that takes us up into August to have a safe zone. So I'm cutting up until leaf out. The good thing is with the oaks, they leaf out last out of all the trees in the woods. And so you really can cut up about to that time. I know a lot of state agencies like to give you a firm date that you should stop cutting, but really it depends on, it's more than that. It's just a certain magical date that you can use everywhere. It really depends on when those oaks are leafing out. And so you want to stop cutting before that time. I still have some aspen regeneration to cut early right now, but boy, my window is quickly quickly disappearing. We're still in April right now, and unless I cut this weekend, tomorrow, I'm not going to get that job done until July, August, which isn't a bad time to do so towards the end of the summer, when the trees are back in their summer dormancy and a lot of that energy is being drawn back into the root system. Number 4, I always refer to May as the official water hole month. It's a great time to install water holes. You have plenty of time to get used to them before the season. Also, there's a lot of moisture in the air. There's a lot of rain coming down. So yeah, you can fill them if you want, but a lot of times I put in water holes in May that I didn't have the ability to fill, and lo and behold, you come back during hunting season and they're full. Really depends on the year. Last year we had to fill our water holes quite a bit, the year before too. So it just depends on how much drought is there during the hunting season. There's been 2 or 3 years in a row where I haven't filled the water holes because there's been plenty of water. This is a great time to get them ready, get them in the ground, let that water get kind of stinky. You don't need anything to ward off mosquitoes. The best water holes for deer are stagnant, stinky water holes, swamps, mud holes, ponds. That's what deer like to drink out of. They don't like crystal cold, clear water like we do. We're not deer, deer aren't us. They require something different. I've been told that it could have something to do with the warmth of the water. They don't have that chill going inside them when they want to lap it up. They're efficient creatures. They're not drinking water and just hanging out at the bar for a drink. What they're doing is drinking fast and moving on. That's why I love hunting water holes. They're not hanging out there for a very long time. So great time to put in water holes this month, and we're going to try to do that more mid-May this year, as opposed don't do like me and wait till August and put them in. Sometimes things get busy, and then the one thing about that is I'd rather put them in May, but even if you have to put them in August, you can still get something done. You're not spooking out your deer herd. Even early September in a lot of states, you still have 3 or 4 weeks of forgiveness by intruding in a certain area. And then I do fill them up right away, but the deer get used to it pretty quick, especially when you throw some rye, some clover seed, some various grasses around that exposed soil that you use to dig those water holes down below ground level. I use at least a 110 gallon tank now, up to 150 gallon, and I don't recommend much smaller than that because it just simply doesn't hold water for very long. Number 5, critical food and switchgrass spraying. So all my new switchgrass won't be germinating till the end of May around here, especially with our cold spring. I'm spraying in early to mid-May with a mix of 2,4-D and glyphosate. 2 pints per acre, or 2 quarts per acre of glyphosate mixed with 1 pint per acre of 2,4-D. Now you have to be very careful because the 2,4-D will stay in the ground for about 2 weeks. So if you're in up to 3 weeks, if you want to be careful with that. What that means is if your switch germinates within that 2-week period, even up to 3 weeks, it'll kill it. Glyphosate, when it hits the soil, it's neutralized. So you don't have to worry about that. Now, that's a common ag mix that's been used for many years. I've used it personally for about 15 years, that combination of 2,4-D, and I've used it because it was a common ag mix that was recommended to me, that same exact ratio. When you're mixing that, I had a question this week. Someone's talking about, I don't even know who, saying you can't mix glyphosate and 2,4-D together because it gums up your sprayers. That is not true at all. Like Dylan pointed out, it is true if you let the chemical sit in your tank all winter long. You're supposed to spray them out, clean them out. And I can say too, if you leave water in your tank all winter long, it's going to be a bad thing because you're going to freeze your lines, crack them, and then you have a broken sprayer going into the following spring. So whether it's water, glyphosate, 2,4-D, simazine, you don't want to leave water, any of those chemicals in through the wintertime. But it's very safe, and I've done it for many years. I probably sprayed a total of 40 to 50 acres last year like this through my sprayers. To mix, it's very common to mix glyphosate and 2,4-D at those ratios, and they will not gum up your sprayer unless you leave it sitting there for many months at a time, which most of you won't do. Now, the reason I'm spraying that is because the 2,4-D is a great broadleaf killer. Broadleaf specific, it's very powerful. Glyphosate's minimally powerful, but it's more of a general non-specific herbicide, meaning it'll kill grasses, broadleafs, but clover doesn't do a very good job with. Water hemp, pigweed. There's other broadleafs it doesn't do a great job with. So when you mix it with 2,4-D, it really enhances the broadleaf killing capabilities, especially, not to mention grass. And so you'll get a good kill. And this is a time where I'm spraying that 2,4-D and Roundup because I don't want to have any competition for my switchgrass. I'm also, with a lot of my newer food plots that I brush hogged out this year, that I'm turning into food plot space this year, that's a really important spraying because it's going to grab a really good control over all weeds and get a really good initial kill so that subsequent sprayings don't have a lot of debris. I don't have a lot of debris to work through in the fall with no-till practices. And I might even be able to put buckwheat in more like mid-June, end of June, to even use the buckwheat rotation depending on how much soil exposure there is. So the May is a huge, very important time. I've used simazine up until now on all my switchgrass areas. You can use simazine on your corn areas. And then 2,4-D and Roundup time at about 2 to 3 weeks after spring green up. We're just starting to get spring green up right now. And then we have a high of 41 today. We're gonna have 20s tonight. So that slows down. This spring has been very cool. And our switchgrass will probably be germinating more like early to mid-June this year as opposed to late May. It could germinate in middle of May if you had a very warm spring, but switchgrass needs that 58-degree soil temperature and it needs moisture. So just because your soil temperature is warm enough doesn't mean it's going to germinate unless you have a lot of rain to go with it for an extended period of time. So really good time to spray that. Number 6, I already talked about, post-winter scouting, March, February, March, early April, great time to actually go hit some public land and get a good game plan. May is also a great time, and then you flip forward to August, September. So really, if you're looking at public land, you're scouting those 3 times. And my scouting missions on public land have always been a few hours. I have very specific spots that I need to go to out of 10,000 acres or more. I look at those spots and then I leave. If I need to add a spot or 2, let's say I pick out 5 or 6 spots, 2 or 3 are duds because they're based on old rubs, old scrapes. I'm not seeing the historical sign in the areas I think there should be. Then I'm moving on to a couple new spots. And by the time you get to that third time you're going down, you really have narrowed it down to some spots that are adequate for hunting, that you really feel excited about. And then it's more, we need to put a stand in this tree, this is where we need to hunt. And you're really getting your hunting game in on that time. So you're really looking at lay of the land without leaves. You're getting more specific, maybe adding 1 or 2 spots in the second scouting mission. And the third one is more, this is where I need to hang trees or hang stands. This is where I need to hunt from. This is where I need to put a ground blind, whatever it might be. And then you're going from there to where you're actually hunting. And again, I'm just spending a few hours at a time. So this isn't something I often, if I was driving from Michigan, in the UP of Michigan, I'd drive 10 hours, 12 hours down to southern Ohio to scout, and we're scouting for a few hours and going home. So I had way more driving time than actual scouting time, but it paid off in the fall. So really good time to scout. Always remember that this is a great time for water holes in May. There's a lot to be done, from broadheads to scouting to your food plots, switchgrass, water holes. There's a whole bunch you can do in May. And for the rest of the year too, have a good May, get a lot done, and you'll be happy you did so when it gets into August and September, and you're all set up to have a great hunt this fall. Now I'm excited again this year to host our Camp Kicking Bear charity event. Last year we did it in June, and it was a big success. We were able to raise over $21,000 for Camp Kicking Bear. There's some people that actually made comments that they get sick of hearing about this kind of stuff and whatever else. I think they didn't understand that we're actually raising money. This Camp Kicking Bear is, to me, the #1 children's organization that gets kids in the outdoors, their families, especially a lot of kids that don't have the opportunity to do so otherwise. June 11th, I'll have more details coming out about this, but you can email us for early registration. June 11th, it'd be midday, like 11 to 4 type thing, 10 to 5, 10 to 4. What I do is there's 50 people that register for this. We give that all to Camp Kicking Bear. Well, it's a habitat day. We go out for a couple hours on the property and I show you some strategies that you can take home to your own land. Number 3, we have a hunt raffle for 100 people. The registration for 50 people is $300. That gets you in the door to actually see the property and the land. $100 gets you in a hunt raffle times 100 people. We had Leo from Lower Michigan had a hunt last year, many memories, end of September for a couple days. Number 4, lots of door prizes, Matthews bows, blinds. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that we give away, really good stuff for you too. Kids are free. I think we had about 25, 30 kids last year. All proceeds, again, go to Kicking Bear. Every dollar, every dime we raise goes to Kicking Bear. We'll have some other auction. Last year, Chris B came. We might have Kevin Smith, retired Major League Baseball player. I hear that Gary Suter, he's a NHL Hall of Famer. He might show up too. So there's some chance to meet there. And then, of course, Ray Howell. He was here last year. He delivered his testimony. It was an awesome, inspirational talk that he gave to everyone. Hope to see you there. Look for further details on the site and then the description for the video.